Hello everyone. In this little class vid, what we will be looking at is how to make a complete graph for your lab report. So let's go straight to Excel and let's get started with that. In fact, last time, in the last video, we were looking at how to make the tables, and we came up with tables like this. Now you don't have to have watched the last one to do this one. What we're going to start with is you need to make a table that has only the data that's going on your graph. In fact, you don't need to type that, of course, but we need to know what's going to go on your x-axis, and we need to know what's going to go on your y-axis. And if we keep thinking about that, on the x-axis will go your independent variable, and on your y-axis will go your dependent variable. Now, in case you didn't follow the other video, you're going to notice that on the tables that I have here, our independent variable is what we changed, the temperature of water. So this is an experiment where we change the temperature of water, and then we measure the dependent variable, how much salt dissolves in it. And we process the data and calculated the average and in the uncertainties. If you want to see how to get these two, then you need to just check out the video before this one. But let's go ahead and do this. So we're going to do this. I'm going to take this straight from here, paste that there. In fact, I'm actually going to go back and copy this. I like that little heading as I have it. And then I will make this equal to this and then drag down. Okay, one too many. There we go. I now have my independent variable. This is what I will be plotting. Now I need my dependent variable. My dependent variable will be the average of the masses that dissolved. So looks like these two have to get merged. I can merge up here actually, and I'm going to, this is the value that I want, and I'm just going to copy my heading so I can make my table look nice. I'll deal with the spacing in a minute, and I'll set this equal to here, drag down, and we'll have the data that we need. Okay, so we've got the data that we need, and what I'm going to do here is just scroll down a little bit, and this is what we need for our graph. These two columns. This is what we will be plotting. Independent variable, dependent variable. Now obviously when you do this and you take this and you put this into your lab report, you would label this table 3 or 4, whatever this is, and this is your final data, whatever it is that's going to be. And obviously you don't need these things up here. Oops, that's actually not where I wanted to insert that. Let's insert that here. This information here that I'm putting in italics, you don't need this for your lab report. You could just copy this and put that straight into Microsoft Word, which we're going to do in just a minute. Great, now we need to make a graph. Because we have numbers for both axes, we're going to make a scatter plot. So to make the scatter plot, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to choose the data that I need, and I can choose all of it together like this. I can also choose each column separately, but it's smart enough to know that if I choose all of this, and I go to charts, and I go to scatter, and I'll always choose the first one marked scatter. We won't use any of the other ones. We click on that and we get our graph, and there it is. And we've got a nice little trend. Now this series 1, this is only useful to us if we're going to put more than one line on a graph. In this graph we're only going to have one line, so we don't need this. So I can just backspace and delete that out. Now I've got a nice looking graph, but we've got to do some work on this graph. So one of the first things I'm going to do is make it a little bit bigger. And we've got a nice, what looks like it's going to be a nice trend. Well, let's start adding some features to this. First of all, I'm going to 2-finger click on any one of the dots. Doesn't matter which one. Any one of the dots, and I'm going to add a trend line. And I start to get options. Notice that the first option it gives me is linear. Well, I'm going to take a look at this. And this is probably not a bad linear graph. Maybe this point is an error. These look pretty good. Let's see what other options we get. Logarithmic. This does not seem to fit at all. We can skip right over that one. Polynomial tends to be a good one, and this could be polynomial. This does look like it could be a curve. And this would change with each lab. Power. In this case, we're not really able to see that power graph very well, as it graphs it as almost as a straight line. And this is a nice looking graph for what we have. I like this. Exponential. Now, we don't know what this should be. We don't know if anything's an error. And so right now I'm going on the assumption that this is going to be an exponential graph. And this would be different for each lab. I'm going to go for exponential. In fact, what I'm going to do is add on here to put the r squared value so we can see that. And we've got an r squared value of 94776. Not great. Remember, the r squared value, the closer to 1, the better the data points fit the line. 9477, it's not that great. We want something 98 and above, 99, something like that. But we're going to go with this. All right, we need to add some things to our graph. So let's go to chart layout. And we're kind of going to hit all of these. So let's start with the left, chart title. Let's put a title on here. Where do we want it? I want a title. I'm going to put it above the chart. I don't want it to overlap. I'm going to put it above. There it is. Notice this square is selected. It's got the little circles on the corners. I can just start typing. And so this is temperature of water. And a good title you can use is versus mass of NaCl dissolved. I think that's what we said that this was. And I can use this versus as a title. I can hit enter if I need more space, or there we go. Axis titles, I'm just going to go straight to the very next one. I'm going to put a title below the axis. Once again, it pops up, it's automatically there. And I need two things here. I need to tell you what it is and what units it's in. And so this is temperature of water, and I must tell you the units. It's in Celsius. I'll use my IB notation of a slash to separate what it is with the unit. I click outside and I'm done. I'm going to do the same thing with the vertical axis, and I'm going to choose horizontal here. And this is average mass of NaCl dissolved, and once again my unit in grams. I click out, and now I've got axes labels, axes titles, a line, an r squared value, and a title. I'm going to keep going. Now a legend. I would add a legend, once again, if I had more than one graph. In this case, I don't have that. Data labels is if I want to state the value for each one. There's no need for that on this type of graph. Grid lines. This is one that we want to do. We want to add major and minor grid lines. It's kind of hard to tell where each data point is. So we add grid lines, both directions, major and minor. Okay? And there we go. And now we have a graph that we can now export into Microsoft Word. Let's take a look at that. So what I've done here is just popped in here a Microsoft Word document. And this would be in theory where you would be working on your report. And so what you can now do is take this, just select it, and you can just copy this and select the Microsoft Word document, and you can paste this, and it will paste your table just like you have it. And if you've included everything here, it will include everything that you need, your uncertainties. You can go back and make this look a little bit nicer if you want. You can adjust these things, etc. You should obviously have all of your tables, not just this one. But we can now go back and copy this graph as well. Copy, and then we go here, paste, should pop up. There we go. And one thing that you want to make sure is that this graph is big. Do not submit a small little graph. In fact, in the old days, IB wanted you to have a graph that was a full page. Do not submit a graph like this. Make the graph as big as you can make it, maybe half a page size, something like this, so that we can see it. In fact, in some of the reports, you'll be manipulating the graph, doing gradients and things like that. Okay, so there we go. There's your little class vid on how to make the graph and put it on Word. Hope that helps. Later.